Alright, hopefully you guys can see this okay. It's getting dark out. But this here is BMW 525i, and it definitely has some sort of, I mean, it has an oil consumption problem, but I am not 100% sure where it's going. So I got the valve cover gaskets, and there's like a bunch of, if you order valve cover gaskets, they give you this whole thing. But then I also got this little thing. Now this is a gasket for the, there's a little housing on these that this is an oil filter, and it's on like an extension. It's on an extension of the engine block in here, and it's just like it's a piece of basically engine block that they just bolted to the engine block, and obviously they need to get the oil through it so that they could get it to this thing. So there's a spot on there where this seal goes, and apparently this thing and all these gaskets very commonly get dry rotted because these are rubber gaskets, and everybody runs synthetic in these BMWs because that's what BMW says to do. And then that makes all those gaskets get dry rotted and they crack, and then your engine leaks oil all over the place. This car has like 120,000 miles on it, but it has been leaking oil for some time. So obviously that is much too early to have a chronic problem. So first thing I need to do is take off the this intake here. Yeah, you have to take a remarkable amount of stuff apart on this car to do like any work on it at all. Oh, it's something inside. That's the problem. That thing was stuck inside the hose down there. Something fell. I think it was just this. So that's that. Now, we need to get to this. So this has to come off, which is the reservoir for the power steering. Alternator has to come off because it's bolted to the same piece of engine block extension that the that this oil filter goes through, the oil filter housing. And in order to do that, we got to take the belt off. I want to try to not break the radiator because I don't want to drain it. Speaking of which, I got to drain the oil. I haven't done that yet. But I don't want to drain the radiator, so I'm just going to try to not have to take any hoses off. Hopefully I can get away with that. It would be a lot easier if I did take it off, but I think maybe I can get away without it. There is a tensioner in here somewhere. That's an idler pulley. The tensioner, I do not remember what. Maybe I'll just break this hose here. It's going to dump. No matter where I break it, it's probably going to dump coolant everywhere. That's why I hate modern-ish cars. This is a 2002. I don't know if I said that. So it's not like modern, but it's modern-ish. Oh, I think this thing that I thought was the idler is not. That's actually the tensioner. which I don't know how you actually tension. So let me see if I can show you where it is. There is a bolt. See that bolt right here? This is a bolt. So it's right basically underneath the oil filter. Like straight down in the front, there's that bolt. If I can get the light back on it. Yeah, right there. You need to tighten that bolt. So it's 16 millimeter, I believe. You can use a 5/8. Sorry if I just turn that camera sideways on you. It's hard to maneuver this thing. But yeah, that's where it is. It's right down in there. So tighten it. It's going to be pretty hard to tighten because obviously there's a lot of tension on the belt. So just put a pipe or whatever on your ratchet, and then make sure you pull the belt all the way out, because if you, the first time I did this, I let the pulley go, or I let the tensioner go, and that, see the pulley down there with the grooves? Not this one, this is the alternator pulley, but the one down there with the grooves, and this smooth one here. If you leave it, make sure you get the belt out from in between those, because the bottom one with the grooves is the tensioner, and this one up here is just an idler. And if they touch against each other, the belt can get pinched in between there, and you don't want that to happen. So make sure you get it all the way out. Feels like it's starting to rain here a little bit. I may have to finish recording this tomorrow. It'll be easier in the daylight anyway. But yeah, what we have to do now, see the alternator here? Now you can see what I'm talking about. What I did, see those two holes? This thing goes like that. Those two holes there, they bolt on. It's a 13 millimeter socket. Just grab, pull two bolts out, and then you can take this thing off. And I would recommend doing that before you try to do any loosening of the belt, because it just makes life a lot easier. So this thing can just kind of fall out of the way. That is the reservoir for the power steering. So we need to get this alternator off. You see here, it's connected to all of this in here. So this here is the oil filter housing, and all this is oil filter housing. I believe what we need to do is take the alternator off, and then we can get to, you can see underneath probably in there, see that bolt? It's got to come out, and it'll be a lot easier to do once this alternator's out of the way. So alternator's got a bolt there, like any regular alternator. It's got a bunch of bolts running this way into the block. So take that one out, and there's some other ones on the bottom side. So that's next. So I got the alternator off. Well, it's disconnected. There is apparently some sort of fan on the back of here for cooling, I guess. I've never seen that on an alternator before. It's some strange thing. But it's got this connection to the bottom that goes to a piece of tubing and goes out the front of the car, I guess. I don't know. That's very interesting. I don't know why that's necessary, especially since the alternator itself is exposed to the elements, as all alternators are, because they're just electric motors and they can pretty much never break. But, well, I mean, that's not true. They can break, but they're pretty robust. But I'm just gonna take this here. I want to take this alternator right out of the car, but I gotta disconnect this electrical connection here. And it did have this little clip in it. which just pulls out the top. Just be careful with them because those clips, they're kind of spring loaded, so they want to go flying. So, you know, kind of have your hand there. But what I usually do is just take a paint pen, and that way I can mark that this piece goes to this connection. All right. These paint pens are nice. I don't know what brand it is. That thing. They're really nice. I don't know if you haven't used them, you should get them and use them, because they will. A lot of people try to use like Sharpies and stuff. First of all, Sharpies kind of suck. Here, like there, everything's black. If I can't really paint a Sharpie there. And Sharpies will very quickly lose their ability to actually write on stuff if you're painting on dirt a lot, because it absorbs the dirt, and then the Sharpie's basically junk, or water or anything. These paint pens don't care, and it'll stick to anything. You can have an oily surface, the paint will stick anyway. It doesn't matter. So they're very nice. But the electrical connection can come out, and now this air connection for that fan, that was fighting me. So see if I can get that off. Oh, I never disconnected the alternator or the battery. The battery in this thing's in the trunk, so it's kind of a pain in the ass to disconnect. Actually, that's not true. It's right on top in the trunk. But, so it's not a pain in the ass, but it's in the trunk. So we'll see what this is. Not a 16. Probably a 17 or an 18. That's a 19. For whatever reason, this set, it's a Husky set. No, it's a 17. That's good. This is exactly what you don't want to do. Exactly what I'm doing right now. Trying to break free a bolt that's connected to power when you're using a metal wrench and everything around you is ground. So if you swing into anything, it's gonna arc. Yeah, you should always disconnect the battery before doing this stuff, but I didn't. And look at that, I survived. Now this is power. So I'm gonna set that, hopefully it stays, yeah. I'm gonna just grab some tape and tape that over. The most dangerous part about not turning the power off is sending power to something that you don't want to in the vehicle and damaging the vehicle. It's really not gonna hurt you. It might give you, I mean, you could get slightly burned from it, but it's only 12 volts. And however many amps your battery has, which could be, you know, it's several hundred at the least, up to over 1,000, depending on how good of a battery you have. But still, it's only 12 volts, so it ain't gonna kill you. But it could kill your car, which is the main reason why you want to turn it off. If you end up sending power through a circuit that should not have that, you could fry whatever circuit that is. So, got the power taped off, we're good to go. This alternator should come right out now. Yep. Let's see. Look inside there. Doesn't appear to be anything in here. Can't see unless I give you a light. I saw a video of some guy doing some work on a BMW, and I guess the entire alternator was stuffed with leaves because it had never been taken apart. I don't know if this one has, I kind of doubt it. But yeah, now we can see what we're working with. So I got this little clip. I'm going to put it back on the electrical connection for the alternator. This is the, you know, computer thing for the alternator. I think computer, I don't know. I don't think it charges through this cable. That's probably the big red cable. But I don't know what you would control on an alternator. Maybe probably that fan on the back, if that's a fan. Might be an electric fan. So inside here, we've got some more things to deal with. One sec. Let me just adjust this. So you can see in here, that's an electrical connection that has to be taken off. I believe it's the same weird, yeah, it's a weird springy one. They're actually very difficult to get out with your fingers. They're very easy to get out with a screwdriver, but like I said, they're spring loaded, so if you put a screwdriver in there, make sure your hand is on the other side of it so you can hold it so it doesn't go flying. See? Because you will lose them. And then it comes right off. These connections are actually pretty nice. The fact that they're metal is questionable to me because they could corrode, but this might, who knows, these could be little stainless steel clips. They don't have any corrosion on them, which is surprising, so maybe they are stainless steel. Get that back on there. There we go. Alright, so these two connections, obviously they're close to each other, so you could mix them up, but that's why I painted one, so they won't get mixed up. They look very similar connections, but one of them's 2-prong, one of them's 3-prong, so I guess it wouldn't have been a problem anyway. I could just looked at them. And actually, they won't even plug into each other's, because one of them's too wide. Also, different number of prongs. I took off another electrical connection somewhere, but I don't remember where it went, what it was for. Anyway, the point we're at now, we got 1 bolt, 2 bolt, 3 bolt. Can't see that. That's a bolt, that's a bolt, that's a bolt, that's a bolt. I think all those have to come out. There appears to be one up here. And that may be it. I don't really know. I've seen people take the tensioner off the front. I don't know if that's necessary. It's got some bolts in here. It might be. I'm going to try to get this, yeah, I'll get that off there. So this tensioner is not actually grooved. The groove we were seeing before was the belt itself. So this is the tensioner. And you got a lot better view of what's going on here now. See, there's that bolt that's on the tensioner. You tighten that bolt, and like I said, that's a 16 mil. Also, both the bolts that we're holding the alternator on are also 16 mil. These look like they're probably 13. I got one here. Let's see. I'd imagine they'd probably be symmetric, so there might be one on the other side here, but I can't feel anything. See that? See how dirty it is under there? That is definitely leaking oil, which would normally be a bad sign, but since I'm trying to fix an oil leak, that's a good sign, because it means the thing I'm trying to take apart is probably the correct thing. There's a power steering pump down here. This is the power steering pump. Now, I don't know if it's... Well, the power steering lines are still hooked up and they're probably wired to the car. There's this thing. It's got a bolt in it, which is actually the same... Well, it's just a nut. That's interesting. I'm thinking maybe if I take off, I don't know what that is. I'm thinking maybe if I take off this bolt and that bolt, I may be able to take the power steering pump off the front, and then I can get, then the power steering is not going to be a problem when I'm trying to take this off, because otherwise I'm going to have to fight the power steering lines. And I'm trying not to break any lines. Speaking of which, I still have not drained the oil out of this. But I don't need to until we're at that stage. So that's probably 13, which I have right here. No, that's a 13. And it is a 13. And it is a pretty tight 13. The alternator bolts were pretty nice on this. All I had to do was break them, and then I could run them out with my fingers. I'm hoping this one's the same way. It is possible I could get an impact in here with a couple universal joints and turn my power 90 degrees so I could get this out, but I like using impact guns when possible. Oh yeah, look at that. It just spins. It's a little bit gunky in the threads, but you can, the gunk's building up. Oh, there we go. I just gotta get past that little bit. Nah, it doesn't want to. See the end of the bolt? It builds up on the bolt on this end as it's coming in, and then it gets to a point where you can't turn it with your fingers anymore. So probably once we get past that little bit with the wrench, it'll be finger loose again. Nope, still tight. Man. Come on. You know you want to come out. This thing is really not cooperating. Sorry about that. I got a little bit of allergies this time of year, and I was getting stuffy. It's hard to talk when you're getting stuffy. Come on. Oh, there we go. So, yeah, that's a pretty decent bolt. I have no rhyme or reason to where I'm putting these bolts as I take them out, which is a bad idea, but I know where a soup can is I can use too, and I just didn't get it. So hopefully I'm not searching around for bolts in a half hour when I start putting this thing back together. Hope half hour is being optimistic probably, but hopefully that's how long it takes. That first bit there took me quite a long time to figure out what was going on with this belt. But once I actually figured out that the tensioner, the thing that I thought was a tensioner to begin with is the tensioner, but the only difference is the 8 mil isn't really what you should have been using, then I was good. So you might wonder why I'm not using a ratchet. And I wonder the same thing. I had a 13 out here. I think it's on my, yeah, it's on my impact. That's tightening. That ain't gonna work. The thing about ratchets, this is a little ratchet. I haven't used this one yet on this job. And the thing about ratchets is when you put them, when you go to use them for the first time on a job, they're always going the wrong way because the last time you used them, you tightened something back on. So I don't know why I would ever think that it was going the right way, but I do that all the time. I don't check the ratchet, then I start going, and it turns out I've been ratcheting the wrong way for a little bit. Obviously you can't do that if it's still tight. You'll know immediately, but if it's loose, this is like so loose I can't even really tell which way I'm pulling. It doesn't feel like I'm doing anything, but I still can't turn it with my fingers. It's like that, just this extra like couple inches of leverage make it effortless, but when you get down and try to turn with your fingers, you can't do it. And ratchets are much nicer than wrenches anyway, so I don't mind that much. Until you drop it like that and it turns around and gets stuck down here. This ratchet I'm using is a really old little Craftsman 1/4 inch drive set. I've had this ratchet for probably 15 years and it has worked pretty well for that amount of time, and it's getting to the point where it's really worn out. So the ratchet mechanisms are really tired in there, but it's done me a lot of good. This is the first ratchet that my dad bought it for me when I was like a teenager, and I used it for like everything. I still use it. Thing about 1/4 inch drive set, well, it's a 1/4 inch slash. You see I got the adapter on there. This is actually 3/8, but it came in a set like that. It was a Craftsman set, but the only ratchet was a 1/4 inch drive ratchet, and then they just gave you a adapter to run the bigger 3/8 sockets, and it goes all the way up to 3/4 and standard and 18mm and metric, so you could do most jobs with it. Ratchet itself is only about 4 inches long, so you're limited on the amount of leverage, but alright, so 2 bolts out, so that idler's down. We can actually just leave that right where it is. It's out of the way and it's disconnected. So now we got to run these bolts out, I think. I don't know how many are in here. I know there's at least 5. Well, I know there's 4. I think this one up here is a 5th. I think there's one up here, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that I'm gonna use the impact for, because this is exactly where you would use an impact when you have bolts that are facing perfectly outwards and you want to get them out quick. I say that, but then the impact, it can't turn them out. So I'll break them free first, and then we'll use the impact. Really should put an extension on this. Set. Yeah, that's loosening. These things are pretty tight. Probably because they're engine bolts. So this is a perfect scenario where, oh great. Let's see if I can fish that out of there. I did. Nice. So this is a perfect scenario where obviously you put this ratchet here, and then you push down on it with your hand here, and you use as much force as you can, and then it breaks free and your knuckles slam into that, and then you're pissed off. So don't do that. Just throw an extension on there and you'll be good to go. See, now if I swing, can't really see what I'm gonna hit, but it's just it's basically free below me. There's some, you know, rubber hoses, but I'm not gonna slam my hand into some metal. These feel like they're Loctited. Hopefully they're Loctited and I didn't just break a bolt off. Yeah, if I break one of these, I'm gonna be not happy about it. I don't imagine they probably will break, but I don't know what this block is made out of. It might be aluminum. Aluminum blocks are notorious for having bolts break off in them. And then once they do break off, since the bolt is steel and the block is aluminum, it's very difficult to drill them out without the whatever you're drilling with slipping off and digging a hole in the aluminum. So these are torqued pretty tight. Now, when I work on stuff, I know mechanics and stuff will be annoyed by this, but I don't torque anything to spec. Well, not anything. I torque things that matter to spec, like you know, head bolts and flex plate bolts and flywheel bolts and, you know, things, and also you know, rocker arm bolts and engine rod bolts and everything, and all the bolts for all the bearing clamshells in the engine. Anything where if you don't torque it to spec, you'll probably blow up your engine. That's what I torque to spec. But things like this on the outside that just put a housing on another housing, basically, if they were tight as all hell when you took them off, just tighten them back up to tight as all hell when you put them back on, and then you're good to go. You have to have a good feel for it, because you could obviously, you know, over torque them and destroy the threads or the bolt. So you have to be able to feel what you're doing well. But if you do this for, you know, 20 years, then you get a good feel for when you're going to destroy a bolt, because you do it about you know, 50 times, and then you know exactly where it's about to break right before it does, after you've done it, after you've broken about 50 bolts. And sometimes the feeling, you can feel it, but by the time you feel it, you don't have time to react and let off. It's already been, you know, because you can feel it start to yield, just barely start to yield, and you have to stop immediately, because if it keeps going, it's going to shear. Can you even see what I'm doing? Probably not. I'm not an expert at working a camera. You probably noticed. Well, this one's tight. Well, it's not tight, but it's a hell of a lot tighter than the other ones. Jesus. What do you think the over-under is on how many bolts I'm gonna lose? Considering I'm not putting them in a container. Gotta consult Las Vegas, see what they think. I'm putting them all in convenient locations that make sense to me right now, but future me probably won't remember where present me put them, which is usually the case. And then you find it and you're like, oh, that was a nice place to store them. I do that with stuff all the time. Alright, look how oily this bolt is. It's got a lot of oil on it, which, again, good sign. It's a weird good sign to have. Let's see. That is still very tight. It could just be that it's sealed to the engine. I don't know. I think it's still got a bolt or two in there. I'm moving the whole car. Now it's possible that this, or not that, yeah, this bolt and this bolt have to come out. I don't know why they would, but it's possible. I'm guessing this one has a, the one that I took out up here, I bet you that has a, oh, there it is. Oh, I wonder if this is one. I wonder if this is the mate to that one to make it symmetrical. Because for whatever reason, everything always needs to be symmetrical. Let's see what happens. It looks like it's at the right angle. Oh, Christ. Don't break on me. There we go. It would suck pretty hard if I get that far, get to the last bolt and it shears off. Yeah, that looks like it's quite long, but it probably runs all the way, obviously it's longer than the other one. Oh yeah, look at that, loose. And I just realized I still did not drain the oil out of this engine. This is the point where I definitely need to do that, so let me do that. Hopefully it doesn't dribble all over me while I'm doing it. Take a look at how crazy these this oil pan is on here. That's a cast aluminum oil pan. Now I don't know if you're watching this and you think that's normal, but on vehicles that I work on, that ain't normal. They're usually stamped steel. And it's got the drain plug on the side. This isn't the back. That's not the back of the oil pan. This is the back of the oil pan. See, front of the engine's that way. Wheels there. Wheels there. Front of the engine's that way. This is a 17 millimeter. So I got this catch pan. It's pretty clean. Hopefully it's clean. Clean enough. I'm going to put it this way. It's got a crack in it. I'm going to put the crack up. This is enough. This is big enough that I can catch the oil in it. I know that because I changed the oil in this thing about a week ago with the same pan. And apparently I cranked the living piss out of this. Jesus. Jesus. I think I figured out why this is so tight every time. I used to think that her mechanic was just a madman and he cranked the living piss out of stuff. But I think what actually happened is this is an aluminum oil pan, and that's a steel bolt. And guess what engines do? They heat up and they cool down. And guess what aluminum does? It heats up and cools down. Well, it heats up and cools down at the same, probably the same rate, but it expands at a different rate than steel. So probably that heating and cooling makes this thing extremely tight around the bolt, and I'm not going to be able to get this off while holding the camera, so. Alright, I got it loose. It would help if I turn it the right direction. Yeah, first time I pulled on it the wrong way. Sometimes I get confused when I'm laying upside down. The weird thing about this is it was very loose for a little bit, and then it tightens up again. It's very strange. Almost like somebody tried to put a bolt in here crooked once. Which I know wasn't me, so could have been some mechanic or the previous owner. There was a second owner, well, a first owner to this car. The second owner currently is the person that I am fixing this for. Alright, so it's loose enough I should be able to take it right out. This oil hopefully looks new. I changed it like a week ago, literally. Which, if I realized that I was going to do this gasket set now, I would have just changed it after I did the gasket thing, so that I don't have to worry about contaminating the oil when I take it out. And there we go. And I missed. Great. The oil appears to be cleanish.
What's up?
What's up? Can you give me a rag? Alright, so that is precisely what I did not want to do. It's still dripping just a bit, but yeah, I spilled oil all over the place because I did not have the bucket in the right spot when I finished opening the drain plug. Luckily, the oil was pretty clean, so hopefully it won't stain the concrete. Well, at least hopefully it won't stain it pretty bad. I know it's going to stain it a little, but we can throw this nice little e-trailer box, which you might have seen in a different video, under here, so that I can lay on it without getting myself all covered in oil. Now, I don't actually know where I put the drain plug. It could be in this bucket of oil. I'm not going to go digging around for it in here, because that's a lot of oil. I will just... I don't know what I'm going to do. Hope I didn't throw it out. I could have. I might have wrapped it up in a paper towel when I was wiping stuff. I'm throwing it right in the garbage. I also might have thrown it in this big old pool of oil here. Hopefully I did neither of those things. Well, it's not under there. It's not over there. Is it in the garbage can? Oh, I don't feel it in there. That's oily. Well, I don't believe I put it in there. Is it in the bucket? Oh, it is. Look at that. And that's getting dangerously close to the crack. I better turn this bucket around. Concrete slopes away from the garage. Okay, so now try to get to a paper towel. It's hard to wipe a paper towel off on your hand when you can't use your other hand. Or wipe your hand off with a paper towel, whatever. So let's see what we got here. The oil's out of the engine, so now I can actually pull this thing apart without hopefully making a mess. Something's hooked up. Now, you probably can't see anything because I was standing in the light, huh? Now, oh, it's hooked up. See that there? Right here. That thing is stopping me from pulling this out. I don't know what that is. I guess an oil line? Why you would need another oil line is beyond me. But looks like there's a bolt right there, which appears to be 17 maybe? 17 or 18? Well, let's see here. This is, oh, this is a 19. Oh, it's a 19. Look at that. Oh, great. Wonderful. That is just perfect. I just dropped the drain plug down. Hopefully it's not too far down. Oh yeah, there you go. Hear that? That was the glorious sound of the oil plug being lost forever in the abyss that is the underneath of this engine, on top of the plastic cover that shouldn't even exist. I don't know why they put plastic covers on their cars. I assume it's like corrosion resistance, but the bottoms of engines don't corrode. And if they do, you put new oil pan on it, because that's all that's going to corrode. Hopefully this line doesn't like piss oil everywhere. I assume it's an oil line and not like some sort of power steering or something. I don't know how that could possibly be. It's got to be oil. I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to get that. I don't know if you notice underneath the car, but I jacked on the on that plastic cover. I put the jack directly under the plastic cover. And I put that jack directly under the plastic cover onto a bar on the frame, which I use to jack the car up. But because of that, that means I can't remove the plastic cover because the jack's already under there. And there's really no point to jack. There's no place where you can put a jack under this car that's not on a plastic cover. It's like they didn't realize that two-point lifts are not a thing that every person has. Now, I would love to have a two-point lift, but I don't have one, so we're stuck doing the old plebeian thing. Alrighty. Well, it doesn't look terrible, the gasket. Obviously, there's a bunch of oil in here. There is oil. See, there's not oil in here, though, really. There is now, because I'm dumping it in there, but there wasn't. Which means this probably wasn't actually leaking. Which means I just did a lot of work for no reason. If you look down here, there is oil in here. All that, that's oil. Now that could have happened because, remember, I took all the bolts out, and then I broke the engine, and then I broke the thing free, and then I realized I never drained the oil out of this. So, I did that. Oh, that's good. Look at that. That's some nice stuff. That's what you want to be pulling out of your engine. Jeez. Well, I guess we'll try to soak up some of this oil. And then clean up the gasket surface and put her back together. And hopefully the leak stops. Now, underneath the vehicle, there's oil all over the underneath of this motor. So something's leaking. Which is, believe it or not, a good sign. Because if oil ain't leaking externally, that means it's leaking past the rings. Which means we need to do a ring job, and I don't want to do that. Of course, at this point, I got the motor half taken apart just to get the friggin' oil filter gasket on. I swear, the amount of work it takes to do a simple job is quite ridiculous. see if we can just work this out of here. See how bad it is. It actually seems a little bit pliable, which is surprising to me. Now, this is a very common problem with these engines, and it is possible somebody has already replaced this in the lifetime of the vehicle. But additionally, this this thing does not want to come out here. Jeez, come on. Yeah, nowhere. It just does not want to. I need something sharper. There we go, a razor knife. One of the stupid razor knives that won't stay up. I don't know why these things exist. Like, the locking mechanism is not dangerous unless you're an idiot. In fact, I think it's more dangerous that it can't lock, because then I have to have my thumb holding this up instead of gripping onto it good, so I can let go of it easier. Okay, see, this whole thing came out, and it did so. This is not a good sign. See, this thing, it's not in good shape, but it's not in bad shape, which means it probably was not even leaking from this. So this, I think it goes in this way, right? Or yeah, it can't go in the other way. It's got to go in this way. Well, before I do that, let's make sure there's no crap in here. Yeah, I think everything that's in here is basically just oil. In these grooves, I mean. That's really what you want to have clean. Now this is a razor blade tool. You put a razor blade in here and clamp it down, and then you can scrape with it. I don't have a razor blade in here though, so I'm going to use this thingy, which is, you know, it's okay, but I mean, that's not that sharp. And yeah, it's good enough. It's not that, I don't like that. There's like a burr here. Yeah, this thing isn't really that sharp, so I mean, obviously it'll wear down, and then you'll have to fix it. You know, you have to regrind edges on it. Razor blade with the tool, you can just replace razor blades. Downside to that is sometimes you don't have any razor blades, like today. This is clean enough. I mean, this should be fine. So we're just going to take this and press it in where it belongs. And be careful not to screw it up, because the edges of the metal are very sharp. They're 90-degree edges, but they're still very sharp because it's, you know, high precision milling. And you just want to kind of nicely work it into the grooves. Make sure everything's seated properly. So that is, I believe, all lined up. Now it looks like that one's short, looks like that one's short, and this one up here is probably short. That's probably longer and longer. So we'll try that. Well, it started easily. Well, those are ready to go. I just gotta figure out where I put that. I think this is that's a 13.
Oh, that's cool. What? I'm hoping he has a better time with an air than he does in Warsaw, though. Yeah. Well, that's what I said. We can. Come do shit.
So one thing I did want to show you, see that little brass ring there? This is the oil drain plug. Now there's a little brass ring that you're supposed to put on with it. I didn't have it on when I took this off because I didn't realize this was what this was for. It comes with your oil filter when you buy an oil filter for this car, and I didn't know where to put it, so I didn't put it anywhere, but it goes on the oil drain plug. I realized that after I put oil in the car, so I wasn't about to take the plug back out, just put this on. So I didn't, but now that I have it out again, I'm going to put the ring back on when I put it back together. Also, I just grabbed this is the plastic plate that sits underneath the car. Look how gunky that is, man. Now, I'm hoping oil has been spilling on this for a long time. But I'm not 100% sure of that, so we'll have to see what happens. I really hope that this engine's not burning oil. Really, the only thing I know about it is I was told that it takes oil all the time. And it's annoying that you have to keep refilling it. But, I guess it runs fine, drives fine, doesn't smoke or nothing, which, I mean, if it's burning oil, especially at the rate that I was told that it's losing oil, they said it's like, it's usually half a quart a week, sometimes up to a quart a week of oil, which is nuts. I mean, if you're burning that much oil, your vehicle should be smoking like all the time. So I'm guessing it probably is just, leaking. But yeah, that gasket didn't look bad that we just took off. In fact, I have it over here. It's like, I mean, you saw it a while ago. But this is so pliable still. Usually, if these are bad, when you take them out, they're like hard plastic that's extremely brittle and usually already cracked. And then when you go to flex them, it doesn't flex, it just snaps, and that's how you know it was really bad. So it's possible that the valve cover gaskets can fix a leak if those are leaking, but if neither one of those, once I get this valve cover off, I should be able to see better down here. There's stuff on this side of the engine, a bunch of different things that can leak oil. One of them being the oil pressure sensor. So, I think it's the oil pressure sensor anyway. I had that leak on one of my Monte Carlos back a while ago. The oil pressure sensor in those can just blow up. I don't know if the same thing happens in these, but like the sensor itself breaks and then it starts leaking oil out of the sensor. And you lose a lot of oil very quickly. Like it leaks a lot. Like all of the oil would drain out of my car if I couldn't even drive it. It happened when I was at work and I had to drive it home, and I got about halfway home, and it leaked slow enough that I could drive, so I drove a while. I got about halfway home, and then I'm just looking for any auto parts store or anything as I'm driving, and I would just stop at an auto parts store, buy a bunch of quarts of oil, and and put them in my car. And then I would just pull over the side of the road every once in a while and fill the engine up with oil until I got home. So I was just like pissing oil all over the road, but I had to get it home so that I could fix it. Alright, so it's the next day. See that hole there? I got the thing back on, but this top hole, this bolt goes in it. I put it in, tightened it down, hardly put any torque on it, and it pulled the threads. I couldn't believe it because I put up way more torque on all the rest of them. I don't know, I probably put maybe 20 foot-pounds on everything. And this one, I got down, I seriously just like my wrist tightening and it pulled the thread. So I don't know if they were already just really damaged or something. But I gotta do something about that. So my plan is, this is an 8mm 125 bolt. So what I could do is just take a 9mm 125 tap the hole. I don't think I'll run into any like hitting oil sleeves or anything, hopefully. I doubt it. But I'll put this in there. And just to make sure I could, you know, when I put the bolt in, I'll RTV it. And then even if I did, you know, if I barely get into the edge of an oil sleeve, it won't matter because it'll be RTV'd in. I don't imagine that it's possible that if I go, because I'm not even going, you know, I'm basically expanding the hole by 0.5 millimeter on either side. And if there's a if there's an oil sleeve that close, that's a real problem in engine design. But so what I need is a 9mm bolt, 9mm 125 bolt that's this long. Now, 9mm 125 is not really a standard size. I found this, that's a 8mm 125, and it would be perfect, but it's not 9mm. So, I think, sorry about that. I think what I'm going to need to do is go in here in the bolt bins, see if I can find a 7/16 bolt, and then that's the right length, and then I'll go on the lathe. In fact, this might be a good one right here. That looks like a 7/16, that's the right length, and I just dropped the bolt. Looks, yeah, it's a little short. I'll see if I can find one that's the right length, and then turn it down on the lathe, or even one that's long. This one would work because I could cut the end off. Yeah, I'm going to turn it down on the lathe to 9mm, and then I'll just thread it with a tap. I could thread it with a lathe too, but my lathe is an old school from the 50s lathe, so the only threading runs it has are standard. There's no metric. So, yeah. Well, I'm going to go do that. Alright, this one is definitely long enough, I believe. See? So, our bolt will be plenty long. And again, it's probably about 9.5mm, right? Yeah, in the neighborhood 9.5mm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this down. I could cut it lengthwise. I just bumped the calipers there and changed the size, but it's 9.5mm. I'm actually going to adjust my tool bit here. I want this tool to stick out farther than it does right now. So the way you do that, there's an Allen key in here. And if I just loosen it, here, what it's doing is there this that thing here, that black thing gets pulled in by the bolt. Like it gets pulled going this way, like towards the back, and that clamps, because it's in a taper here, it clamps down on the tool bit. So I just loosened it up so I can move the tool now. I'm going to stick the tool out because I want to have, this isn't usually great to do because you get vibration in the tool itself. So you really want it to be as close as possible. But the reason I want to stick it out is because I want to be able to get to the end of this bolt. And I don't want to hit the chuck with the tool stand. Or fixture, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to run it. That's pretty far out for a tool, to stick a tool out. But I'm going to try it and see what happens. I might get a bit of chatter. But I'm not going to take a lot off at a time. So it shouldn't be a big deal. I mean, I only have to, sorry about that. I only have to lower this by about 1/2 mil. And when I say 1/2 mil, I mean 1/2 millimeter. not half a thou. A lot of people call thous mils interchangeably. That doesn't really make any sense. I mean, it is 1/1000th of an inch, which milli technically denotes, if you're speaking French. But in my opinion, better to call thousandths of an inch thous, because a lot of people in the metric world call millimeters mils for short. And you don't want to mix them up because obviously there's a big difference between a millimeter and 1/1000th of an inch. So yeah, we got to go 1/2. So I'm just gonna run, I'm not even gonna bother cutting the threads on the end. I'm just gonna go from like, yeah, where that divot is about, because I know I'm not gonna need that much bolt. I'll just cut the excess off later. May have been a mistake to stick the tool out this far, but we'll see what happens. And of course there's no lubricant around here. Well, I got some mystery oil. This is just a mixture of all kinds of oils that whatever's laying around, people just pour, you know, if there's a little bit left of oil in a container, they just pour it in here. So it looks like this might be mostly, from the color, it's possible that this is mostly ATF. But either way, it should do something for us. I know I should have actual cutting oil, but whatever. I'm also going to do this very non-scientifically. I'm just going to, you know, plunge a little bit, cut the width, and then see how thick it is with the calipers, and just keep doing that until I'm a little over 9. See the bit moving on me? That's not good. You don't want that. That was one extremely messy pass. So I started cutting it on the lathe, and obviously this side I didn't really get much. It was kind of not in the chuck right, and it was hard for me to get it in there right, especially because you have this, you know, very short head on the bolt that you have to hold in the chuck. That's not very good for chucking up. I could have drilled a hole in the end here so I could get a better purchase on the center on the other side, but I think that it's actually small enough that I can just cut threads in it right now. We're at 9.4 about millimeters the whole way, and I'm cutting 9 millimeter threads on it, so it should go okay. Now this top part, I'm starting at the very top of the bolt. The top is already threaded, so that's going to be easier to cut, but let's just see how it goes. Alright, I got halfway through, but I need to take a bit of a break. I'm not really halfway through, but I started, I'm on, the threads only go to about where the top of my fingernail is there. Everything below that is the shank of the, like the old threads, I mean, only go that far. The rest I'm cutting into the shank, so it's going pretty good. But I built up so much heat in this thing that it actually, if I touch there, I can't hold my hand there. It's too hot. So I'm just going to let it cool a little while, because I don't want to really overheat the tool steel too much in this cutting bit. But you can see I'm making nice threads in there. It's exactly what I want. So yeah, I figured it would work anyway, even though I didn't cut it down to the right size. That works pretty well. So I guess if you need a 9 125 bolt, as long as you have tap and die set, which you should just get this one I'm using is a Craftsman one. It was like, I think like $140 or something, and it's got basically every size in it. From, I mean, not every size obviously, but it's got every size. It's got a bunch of pipe threads, and it's got every size down all the way to like 5mm, and I think 1/4-20 might be the smallest standard size. I think 5mm might be the smallest metric. There might be one smaller standard size, like 3/16 or something. But it goes all the way up to, I think, 5/8 standard and like 14 metric. And it's got coarse and fine thread for everything. It's got the taps and the dies. So definitely worth having one of these. So when you run into problems like this, you can do it without having to go find a bolt. Because even if I went to a hardware store, I bet you they wouldn't have a 9/125. You'd have to go to like some place that sells like only fasteners or something, and they would probably have it because. But it's a pretty rare bolt. Like it's not used much. Usually you use either 10mm or 8mm. Almost nobody uses 9. So. Alright, I actually just went inside, took this tool holder thing and rinsed it under cold water, and now it's actually cold. And this is aluminum, so it should act as a heat sink and pull all the heat out of that steel pretty easily. So I can get back to cutting again. I'm not worried about the fact that I just dumped water all over this thing, because I'm putting so much oil on here that the water will be displaced by the oil. Plus I could just spray everything down with WD-40 when I'm done. Well, didn't mean to drop that, but oh well. So, you see, I was originally planning on going full threaded, but this was pretty hard to do, and it's wearing out. Look at it, it's ripping all the skin off the center of my palms because I push it like that. And you got to put a lot of pressure on this thing to get it to turn because you're cutting steel. But those threads look pretty nice. And I think I can leave this shoulder because the other bolt was shouldered. I'm going to go get it and see. This should work, I think. And then I'm just going to have to drill the housing in that oil filter housing. I'll just have to drill out the hole for that out to... I'll just drill it to 7/16 because that's what this bolt was. And it should be good. Alright, so I went and grabbed that bolt. And the shoulder, obviously we have plenty of threads. Shoulder's even shorter on this bolt than it was on this one. And also, I went and took off the this housing here, and this is the hole that needs to be opened up. And it looks like, if you look at it, this side and that side, there doesn't seem to be any reason that I can't open that up to 7/16, so that should be fine. So I'm just going to open that up, and I'll cut this bolt off where it needs to be. So first thing, probably cut this bolt. Now the easiest way to do that is just to put this bolt in here at the right height, and we know where the height's got to be, about. And then I'll throw a mark right there. And I'm going to cut it with a grinder. Now normally I would want to use a bandsaw, but my bandsaw's at well, it's not my bandsaw, it's my brother's bandsaw, and he brought it to his house. He just moved into a new place. Half his tools are still here, half of them are at his new place, so I'm using my tools. That's why I don't really like to use grinders. I don't have a super strong hold here, so if it catches a little bit, and obviously my wheel's a little bit broken, it's got chips in it, but it'll still cut it. So that should be fine. And now, as long as I didn't royally screw that up, they are the same length, essentially. I'm just going to clean up the end here. It's a little funny. I usually just do that in a belt sander. I just take it, you put it at like a, you hold it down at like a 45 degree or so, and then just rotate it. Usually hold it with a vice grip. That way you can get a good hold on it and it won't heat up too much on you. So that's that, and then we gotta drill out that hole. So I guess I'll just put this in the vise. Alright, rule number one before you go drilling something like this, make sure you're not completely screwing something up first. Which I almost did. I've been saying this entire video that this was a 7/16 bolt. It wasn't, it was a 3/8 bolt. I don't know why I skipped from 5/16 to 7/16. 3/8 is in between. So, this is a 3/8 drill bit. That's what I'm going to drill with. The reason I realized this is because I went and got a 7/16 drill bit. And I'm like, that is way bigger than this bolt. I was like, that cannot be the right size. And it wasn't. So what I'm going to do is drill this. Now, could I be doing this on a drill press? Maybe. Should I be doing this on a drill press? You could argue that. Am I going to do it on a drill press? No. I mean, the thing is, this is such a weird shaped object that for me to even get it square in the drill press to begin with would be difficult. So if I put it in the drill press crooked, it's going to drill crooked. So I might as well just try to drill straight by hand and see how good of a job I can do. I just realized I should not be drilling from this side. I am spitting burrs into the oil. Yeah, let me drill from the other side. I'm going to try to clean out. I'm going to have to just clean this really good. to get that, because I just dumped some burrs down in there. That's bad. That's definitely not what you want to do. The reason I was doing it this way is because there's a bunch of oil in this still, and I didn't want to spill it. But I'm gonna go dump this out, and then I'll flip it around. Okay, we're all flipped around, so let's try to do this a smarter way and drill from the side that's not going to screw up all our oil galleys and stuff. I stuffed a paper towel in the other side to stop the oil from dripping. And then I drilled through and hit it with the drill bit. So we should be good to go here now. My thought was, oh, I'll just go get the air and blow this out, right? All of our air and everything is at my brother's house because we're doing the roof there. So they have every air compressor that I or any of my family owns because we were running like 10 nail guns on the roof. They have like I think it's like a 4,000 or a little over 4,000 maybe square foot house, so it's got a lot of roof. So, and we're trying to get it done in one weekend, which didn't happen. It's a really old building, built in the 1800s, and every time a roof was put on, the old ones were not taken off. So it had 4 shingle roofs on it, and cedar shake underneath that. So tear off was miserable. Yeah, but we're drilled here. Hopefully I, use the old, low technology air. Your own breath. So that should be good. And if we drop a bolt in there, ooh, it gets stuck. It doesn't go right in. I was going to be like, oh, it goes right in. No, it doesn't. Which means I need to open that up a little bit. I'm just going to use the same drill bit. I'm not going to go to a bigger size. I prefer just to do that and wiggle it around a little bit. You don't want to wiggle it a lot because then it'll make the hole a different size. You try to hold it straight up and down and move it in, like move the bit in circles around. Don't wiggle back and don't like rock it because that'll make the hole all funny. And you just take a little bit of material off that way, which is all I needed because it was close. And there we go, we're in. So that's going to be a good bolt. I guess I will find a washer that fits this. I'm sure I have 3/8 washers around, so I'll just throw one on here. And I'll clean up the end a little bit on the sander, and then we're ready to put this whole thing back together. And hopefully I don't run into any more problems like this. Alright, I cleaned up the end. See, it's a little bit rounded now. Like I said, all I do is go on a belt sander and hold it at an angle and then rotate the bolt. And then it cleans it up. Now one thing good to do after you do this or after you cut a bolt, just take the right size die and just run the bolt into it a little bit. You probably can do it by hand like I am. See? And what that's going to do is just going to knock the little bit of burrs that you have in there off. And oh man, it's stuck. So, yeah, that's pretty tight. I don't have a wrench right here. But I do over here. Alright. So, obviously, a wrench would help you better. So you can just run it in. So these threads are pretty tight on this, which isn't a wonderful thing. So I'm just going to run them in and out a few times. The reason that that's probably like that is because, like I said, this thing was getting hot when I was using it, which means this expanded, so it wasn't cutting as much on the bolt, right? So now that it's cooled off, I run it on again, and it'll cut whatever's remaining back. And that way you'll get a good fit so that when you go to thread this in the engine, it'll thread right in. And one other thing I forgot to do that I haven't done yet is that we need to tap the hole in the engine. I haven't done that yet, so I'll just go get the tap that's for this set and tap that real quick. And also I'll just run the die up and down this a few times, and then we'll be good to go. Alright, I ran that a few times. I still haven't done the engine block yet, but one other thing to note about this, what I did here. So this is a 9mm 125, which means it has the same thread pitch as the other ones, which makes it perfect for rethreading. That way we're not screwing up the threads. We're running in the same pitch. We're just widening them up. But problem with that is this bolt, if somebody takes this apart again and they go to put this bolt in one of the other holes, it'll start going in because it's the right pitch. But it'll be really hard to go in because it's the wrong diameter. So people could do that and they could screw up the threads on it. But it's kind of foolproof now because we widened up this hole so the bolt would fit, right? But none of the other ones are widened up. So you can't fit the bolt down in there. You can go a little bit, but that's it. None of them, the bolt doesn't fit in any of the other holes. So if somebody takes this apart again, and it's not me, they'll know, all right, well, this is the big bolt that goes in this hole. This one just goes there. And, I mean, this is now a standard head bolt because I use a standard bolt to cut these threads. So it's not metric, right? So that'll be weird. Except for it'll be fine because this is a 9/16 head. All the other ones were 13mm, which is almost the exact same as 1/2 inch. 13mm is a little bit different than 1/2 inch. 9/16 is basically dead on 14mm. So if somebody's taking this apart and they only have metric stuff, they can still take it apart because they could just use a 14 on this 9/16 head and it'll be fine. So everything will work out pretty well. Now what we have to do is cut the engine block, and that's going to be interesting because we have to cut the threads in it without throwing burrs and chips all over the place. So, and it's aluminum, so I can't just stick a magnet in there and pull them all out. So we'll see what we're going to do here. Alright, so here's the engine. One thing I want to make sure does not happen is I don't want to get any chips down in here. Because this hole right here, down in there, you see that? That goes into the engine. I'm going to move the camera a little bit so you can see better. Yeah, that hole goes into the engine. So, and I believe this hole down here does as well. So we do not want to get anything. So I'm going to just take paper towels and stuff all these holes with paper towels. And then I can cut this. It's got a sleeve in here for whatever reason, which that might be a little bit of an issue. But I wonder if somebody already screwed this up and then they sleeved it because they screwed it up. Or maybe that's just a factory sleeve so that you can get this lined up, because there's one down here too. Yeah, down there. These are probably just factory so that you can get it lined up easy. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this paper towel and just stuff it in there. Take another one, stuff it in there. We don't want to let any chips get in there. Now the oil filter and everything, if we did get anything in here, the oil pump pumps it this way, I believe. Well, actually, one of these has got to be return. I don't know. I don't know which one return is or anything like that. Or maybe it goes up, because there's a hose, remember, that went up like the top here. And then there's a hose that went up to the top of the engine, so maybe that's return. That would be nice. But yeah, we just want to get that packed in there good, so that there's no chance that we can completely screw up by getting any chips inside the engine. They should be filtered, like I said. Hopefully if anything did fall in there, it would just be filtered. Now see, normally I would use this thing. This is a tool that's actually for putting these in, but just the way we're situated right here, I can't really do that. So I'm just going to use a crescent wrench. I'm just going to use this is a 6-inch crescent wrench. It's a decent for this job. One other thing that's good to check, on the sides of these, they say what size they are. Sometimes you can't read it, so the easiest thing to do is just take your bolt. You just take a bolt and you mesh the threads together and try to stick them in. And sometimes it's hard to see if they're actually meshing. So the way you could do that is if you press on both of them together and then try to pull this way, like try to pull out. If you're pressing together and you try to pull out, it should be really hard to pull. Like they shouldn't slide past each other like that. If you're pressing them together like this hard, they shouldn't slide past each other easily. And like I'm pulling apart right now really hard and they're not sliding, which means the threads are meshed. If they weren't meshed well, they would just slide, it would just easily slide past. So that's a good way to tell if you're using the right size tap. Did you look at that? We're spinning this sleeve. Now, I don't know if it matters that I'm spinning that sleeve. I wonder if this whole thing is sleeved. I can't imagine it is. Let me try and see if I can pull this out of here. Yep, it's out. So, yeah, that's just a sleeve that tries to mate this to the other thing. So I, by pulling it out, I kind of bent it a little. So I got to try to get this back to perfectly round. And then after I'm done tapping this, then I'll throw this thing back in there. I think that that sleeve was kind of screwing us up on our tapping in here. Like we were getting held up on the sleeve itself. Also, I'm going to have to make sure that my bolt, if I do run this, I don't know if my bolt's going to fit through that sleeve. And if it doesn't, then I guess we're going to have to just not put it on, or come up with a different way to mate the surfaces. I bet you the existence of that sleeve contributed to our being able to pull these threads. We probably couldn't pull the threads if it wasn't for that sleeve in there, because we had less threads to hold on to because of that sleeve. This is going in like stupid easy. But also, like I said before, we're threading the same pitch in into the motor that it had before. The only thing we're changing is the diameter. And I'm threading into aluminum, so it should go pretty easy. Inside here, I can see there's a bunch of burrs in the bottom. Or whatever, chips. I'll show you. See all the chips down there? No, I want to get them out. But, I'm not entirely sure how I would do that. Like I said, if I had some canned air, that'd be perfect. Or if it was steel, that'd be good too, because then I could just use a magnet. Let me go see what I can come up with. I'll admit that this is not the best solution, but brake clean shoots at a pretty high velocity. So if I put this in there, I'll probably be able to blast that stuff out of there. So let me just try it. That looks like it worked. In fact, it looks like it might be worthwhile doing some more threading. There's no chips in there. There's a little bit on here, but that's why I put the paper towels there. So let's run that tap in one more time and see what we can see what kind of progress we can make with it. Now, I really should have an end tap for this. This thing doesn't end. It doesn't have a good end. You know, it's a tapered tap. That's not what you want. I might have an end tap for this size, but it's not likely. This is probably the only tap I have that's this size. I have all kinds of taps of standard, like every size. But it's not likely that I have one of these. That's it. I'm bottomed out. Alright, let me go see if I can find an end tap. Alright, so I ran this bolt in. That's how deep I can go with it. This is the old bolt. I don't know if you can see it very well, but you can see there's aluminum up to where my thumbnail is, which is about the same depth as that. Which means we should be good to go when we put this in. This will probably bottom, it'll bottom out on the head before it bottoms out on that end. So I should be able to just run this in there. We're going to put it together and try it and see what happens. Okay, I'm going to use some of this stuff. This is Ultra Black RTV, oil resistant. So I took this this bolt, try to wipe as much of the oil off it as I can. I'm just going to run this in. And the reason I'm RTVing this is because I don't really know what... I just cut into the engine, right? I want to make sure... I only cut 0.5 millimeter into each side. So chances of me hitting anything are extremely low. But nonetheless, I don't want to have an oil leak caused from me doing this, especially since the whole point of me doing this is to stop oil leaks. So I'm just RTVing the threads on this. That way when I run it in, and I don't want to have too much on here, so I'm just going to wipe off the excess. You just need enough so that when you thread it in, I'm going to glob a little on the end. The reason I don't want the RTV to get up on the sleeve and then stick the sleeve in the thing, you know, then it'll be just a pain in the ass to get out if I ever take this apart. But this RTV will seal anything in the threads. I know you can't see it, but can you hear that? I can still wiggle the washer and I think I'm at the bottom. That means we've got to shorten up our bolt a little. I'm just going to use this. Oops, lost my washer. I'm going to have to grab that in a minute. But what I do, just run that on. There we go. Now the bolt's just a hair shorter. What we're going to have to do is clean this RTV off. The way I'm going to do that, I'm just going to run the dye on it again. Run all that RTV off, put a new RTV on, put it back in the hole. We should be good. Besides, I got to run the dye on anyway to make sure that my end is cleaned up. Because you can screw up the threads when you do this on the end. So you just run the dye on again and make sure you're good. Alright, so the threads are nice and clean. I shortened it up just a bit, not a lot. Hopefully that'll give us just enough that we can thread this in, and we'll have a good bolt in there. You know, and we'll get it to rest on the shoulder instead of bottoming out. Rest on the head of the bolt, whatever. You know what I mean. I think I didn't put enough RTV on this time. Need a bit more. I just want to get the threads completely filled with RTV. That's tight. Yeah, that is perfectly tight. Now, best way we can check this, make sure it's really good. So I'm gonna put a little on it. All right. So I'm going to take my 13, I'm going to loosen up all the other ones, make sure they're loose. So that's loose, that's loose, that's loose, that's loose, and that's loose. So if that bolt's not doing anything, this whole thing should be loose, and it's not. It's tight, which means we have a good, that bolt's doing its job. So that means we can tighten everything else up. And I'm just going to get it, I put my hand right here, my palm right there, and then just tighten with my wrist as much as I can do. And that's it. Not entirely as much as I can do, but you know, pretty good. You don't want to put too much leverage on it, because these are aluminum threaded holes. Probably should have did this in a different order, but that's fine. I'm sure everything will work out nice. So we're good. Now this time I am putting a little bit of pressure on the top, but not a lot, just a little bit of leverage. And that's just because I can't get my hand down at the bottom. Just a little bit. Like that. And go back, check all the other ones, just a little bit. Just a little bit. A little bit. Oh yeah. Those are tight. That one is tight. So we should be good here. Yep. That's back together. Okay. So I was just working on editing this video, and it turns out I don't have most of the footage of me doing the valve cover gaskets. I have me taking them out a little bit, but I don't have them putting together or anything, and I don't have most of me taking them out, so I'm just not going to put it in the video. But just to tell you what happened with the car, it did wind up that the valve cover gaskets was where it was leaking. They just crumbled in my hands when I took them off, like when I was taking them off. So I replaced them, and it solved the leaking problem, but it was burning oil also. I guess it was doing both. So it did help that it wasn't leaking anymore. It didn't use nearly as much oil as it was, but it was still using some because it was burning it. But it wound up not mattering because a few weeks after that, something hit the windshield. And they tried having the windshield replaced, but it was all corroded and stuff. So, like behind where the windshield goes. So they ended up just trading the car in for a new Honda. So that's going to be the end of the video. And I apologize for any audio issues that there might be in the video. I was filming it with my phone, and it wasn't real consistent with how loud the audio was. I did try to fix it, but I don't think it's perfect still. But hopefully it's good enough, and hopefully you found it entertaining.